Welcome to the Ayurvedic Woman podcast, speaking truth about Ayurveda, yoga, spirituality, and female empowerment. Jai Bhagwan, everybody, and welcome to the Ayurvedic Woman podcast. I am your host, Dr. Satyavani, and I'm stoked that you're here. I wanted to let you know that last time we were together, I lied to you. It is not trying to be spring out there in Boise, Idaho right now. It's actually hardcore winter. So last week it was 70 degrees, and then the next day it was 30, and then yesterday it snowed and there was ice, and I have no idea. I just don't have any idea anymore. So I'm giving up and just surrendering all of it, and we'll see what happens. Today, I wanted to have a discussion about consistency. This has been something that's been in my mind over the past, past month, very, very deeply. And consistency produces long-term results. Short bursts that are scattered don't. They just don't. So whatever goal you set for yourself, consistency is the key to success. And how do you stay consistent? Well, you do the do every day, especially when it's hard. Even if you only do a little bit each day, it's better than no bit. And it's better than doing double the next day. So a lot of times we negotiate in our minds like, well, I'm going to skip today because I'm just not feeling it. But tomorrow I'm going to do double. I'm going to do extra. And that kind of mindset doesn't work in the long run because you can't maintain it. You just can't. Whether you're trying to accomplish a physical health goal, a professional goal, a spiritual goal, a financial goal, whatever it is, you have to stay consistent. It's like the old adage that says, slow and steady wins the race. And this, for me, that old adage kind of conjures up the images of the tortoise and the hare, and the frenetic rabbit racing to the finish line to outrun the tortoise. And the tortoise just puts one little foot in front of the other at a time and eventually gets there before the hare because the hare is just all over the place and isn't consistent. And so what's interesting about that is when I think about society, and where we are in the world, we don't like consistency in our culture because we believe we can have everything now within the framework of our frenetic, disjointed lives. Well, friends, that's a lie. Sorry, you can't. And I'm sorry that I'm not sorry about that, but you can't. First off, the brain cannot hold more than one thought at a time. So this 21st century concoction of multitasking is straight up a lie. Don't even try. It doesn't work, and actually it does more harm than good. It gets the brain rattled and moving in a million directions, and before you know it, not only are you not consistent, but you can suffer from things like brain fog and just really not remembering things because there's just too much penetrating into that matter inside of the skull. When I think of consistency, though, on the other side of this, I think of a few things. The first, actually, is a quote in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And in Sutra 1.14, Patanjali says, practice becomes firmly grounded when attended to for a long time, without break and in all earnestness. Even thousands of years ago, when this scripture treatise was written and assembled, it was acknowledged that consistency was an issue for most people. So the thought that people back in the day did not have the same struggle as modern day humans is an incorrect assumption. It's actually part of the human condition, and we are built to be distracted by the senses. And part of our purpose in this life is to put practices in place to overcome the temptation of the senses. So you cannot obtain enlightenment, which, by the way, is available to you right now. You cannot obtain enlightenment without consistency in practice. Consistency produces long-term results. Consistent practice gives you the opportunity to be enlightened. Inconsistency creates the opposite. Falling short of enlightenment and thus staying in the morass of the human condition. We just kind of get swept up in that whirling dervish. And many of you know me, and many of you know that you've no doubt heard me say that in the Matrix, or the owners of the means of production, want to keep you, all of us, dumb, sick, poor, and afraid. Now, you don't have to agree with me. That's fine. However, if we look at just this from the perspective of consistency, it holds true. How, you might ask? Okay, well, let me share. The culture of fear that we have bred in society, especially over the past couple of years, that leads us to ignorance, ill health, being economically compromised, and fearful, is due to a consistent message that has been infiltrating our society in small, consistent ways for decades. It was not something that happened overnight. It never is. Let's just look at ill health as an example. When I was a young person, half of the diseases that exist now did not exist 40 years ago when I was a child. The development of these diseases, like let's take an example of childhood obesity, that came onto the radar due to consistent changes in food production, changes that were consistent in the food pyramid, and consistent changes in the lack of physical exercise or the emphasis on physical exercise. So when I was a kid, PE was a thing in school. Like you had a PE class just like you had art. And today, in most places, it is not a thing. PE is often just relegated to maybe 10, 15 minutes of outdoor recess, or might not even be a class at all. So, all right, well, there we are with consistency. And so the efforts that produced childhood obesity have been consistent for 40 years. Now, I don't want to seem like a total downer, despite the fact that there is data and research to prove this to be true. And I know the words data and research are taboo words nowadays, but I think you get what I mean. Now, let's look at this on the flip side. Consistency, much like anxiety that I spoke about in a previous podcast, can also be a superpower. Consistency is a superpower. There's no two ways about it. When we do healthy routines, like the Ayurvedic Dinacharya teaches us, Dinacharya, the daily routine, we develop long-term positive results that keep us healthy on all levels of our being, from the physical to the spiritual. If we exercise every day, if we meditate every day, if we breathe and eat healthy, unprocessed food every day, we get long-term healthy results. It's actually pretty simple. So again, practice becomes firmly grounded when well attended to for a long time, without break. So no vacations here, friends, and in all earnestness. So there is a joy and eagerness to do. The other thought that I have about consistency is that it is not always going to feel great. There's going to be a lot of days that it's going to suck, and that's just how it is. It is going to have challenges, and sometimes those challenges can be painful and hard. And guess what? You got to get through it. It's actually that simple. And a lot of people are like, oh no, it's not that. Actually, it is. It is. It's actually that simple. You just got to get through it. You got to recognize, okay, this is hard and this sucks, but it's not going to last forever. And we have to keep our eye on the long term. Just like I mentioned in a previous podcast about it is the marathon, not the sprint. I don't say that to be trite, but the real is that just as Patanjali says, for a long time, without break, in all earnestness, you gotta do it even when you don't want to. And actually, you gotta do it especially when you don't want to, because those are the times that count. Part of the issue in modern culture and in modern society is that we want only what feels good. And we don't want anything to do with having to go through shit. Nope. We also don't want the shit to last very long. And as soon as that shit lasts for more than like a few days, and in some cases it might only be a few hours, we bail out. We give up. And then we make up some excuse as to why this isn't working for me. Or throw in some other spiritually bypassing platitude to justify our lack of consistency. And guess what? We've all done it. I've done it. Hell yeah. And now I'm calling myself on it. So now, to be clear, I'm not applying this to extreme situations like abuse. Rather, I'm just saying that for most, discomfort equals hitting the eject button or pulling the ripcord. Ugh, I don't really like the way this feels. This is uncomfortable. This is not giving me the pleasure it is that I want. And so therefore, I'm out. And yeah, I'm going with no on that one. In tantric practice, specifically in the Shiva Sutras, consistency, or as it's labeled, commitment, is one of the 6 qualities that are actually spoken about vis-a-vis a story regarding a tiger in the text. And the others are vision, power, speed, strategy, and skill. And without having to go into the story of all of that, the point is that we can obtain inner prosperity, that infinity, that eternity, that wholeness, through commitment or consistency. And when I read about this piece, I thought about my cat. So my cat, Safari, best cat ever. Okay, he's an orange tabby. So he's got that tiger-like quality. And I remember when he was a little guy and we, my husband and I, we lived in New York in a home that was in upstate New York. And so we'd get a lot of field mice that would come into the house. And Safari would sit in front. They would enter somehow. There was some like mouse portal that came from outside into the kitchen via the stove. And they didn't come like out of the stove, but like underneath. And Safari would just sit there all night, just consistently sitting there waiting for a mouse to peep its little head out, and then he would go in for the attack. And I want to be clear, I'm not promoting, violence. It was just very Animal Kingdom-like. But what I appreciated about Safari was that he would just sit there and he would wait and he would wait and he would wait, and he was consistent and he would catch them. He would catch those mice. So sharing that story, I guess the question that gets posed now is, when you are honest with yourself, can you say that you are a consistent person? And I'm looking at consistency from a large perspective. It's not just like, oh, I'm consistent going to the gym, or I'm consistent with showing up on time for work, or I'm consistent in being responsive to colleagues and friends and family, or, all of that. But like, are you a consistent person across the board in all aspects of your life? And so, is that truthful? Truthfully, are you consistent? And if not, why? What can you do to shift that in the direction of long-term positive results if you feel like you're not consistent? Part of our flake culture is because we don't have consistency. People just like, oh, there's a squirrel, and like, boom, forget all of their responsibilities or their need to be consistent with and for other people. And that causes rifts in society. So the idea of consistency is not just a personal thing, it has an effect on society at large. And in Ayurveda, consistency is often seen in light of kapha dosha, that earth and water bound dosha that gives us ojas, that gives us our immunity, and ultimately gives us our health. Because if you don't have immunity, like, you're done. So if we are to look at it from that perspective, kapha is consistent and leads to maximum health. It is grounded and it does not lead us astray. So right now, we are in the season of kapha, the spring. And this is an excellent time to think about your consistency and how you can enact that. Some of you know that I am not only a yoga practitioner and an Ayurvedic health practitioner, but I also train Krav Maga. And when I decided to take up this art form, yes, I was in love with the idea that I could go all Jason Bourne if I needed, of which are my favorite series of movies ever, of which training Krav has completely ruined those movies for me, because now I can determine what is real skill and what is Hollywood. Thanks a lot, August. Movies are ruined as a result, but I digress. But my point is that it has taken so much time and so much consistent practice to even get to where I am today from the day that I walked into the school. 18 months later, and I'm still in my infancy. I literally know nothing. Some days I just go there and I'm like, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm here. So here we are. I'm trying to be consistent. But what I can say is that I have been consistent, and that consistency has paid off with physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual results that I didn't have 18 months ago. And it's the same with my yoga and Ayurveda practice. 30 years later, I still do it, and in all earnestness. So what is the key to maintaining consistency and seeing long-term results? Take the ego out of it. Suck that bad boy right out. You do the do because you do it, not because you have anything to prove, anything to achieve, anything to show, or anything to be. As I always say, you are infinite, eternal, and whole right now. And consistency is what makes recognizing your infinity, eternity, and wholeness possible. That's all I've got today, friends. Here we are. I do want to share, though, before I leave, that coming online May 1st is the Ayurveda 108. This is a 108-day program for women that are interested in stepping into their power and living their best life authentically. For 108 days, you will go through a process of purification and strengthening on the level of the mind, the body, and the spirit by engaging in 8 activities every day, because it's all about consistency. You'll learn things about yourself that you never knew and be able to do things you never thought possible. This program is set to change your current state into a state of true woman warriorhood. I'm going to have an upcoming video podcast with the details, but in the meantime, there are details on my website that you can check out, www.satyavanirising.com, and go to the top of the page and click WW Activities. It opens on May 1st, and regardless of where you are in the world, you can join. You want to transform your life? Pop into and join the Ayurveda 108. Love to have you, would love to meet you, would love to support you, and share some really cool things that have changed my life that I want to then pay forward for each of you. Thank you so much for listening, my friends. Jai Bhagwan. And as always, may your soul be victorious.